want to make two very brief introductory remarks. First of all, you want to hide something, let's say a diamond. There are two ways to do it. You can dig a hole in the backyard and bury it, or you can take some meaningless trinkets and put them all in a dish on the dining room table, some old coins and some pretty stones and some fake child's jewelry, put the diamond in there. It's also hidden because the person will glance at the bowl and think, it's just junk. It's right there in full view, but you don't recognize it. I'm going to talk tonight about the secret meaning of the golden calf, but it's right there in plain view. It's right there in the verses. You don't need Kabbalistic commentators to find it. You just have to be primed to look for it. And the second thing is that people often ask, how could it be a mere 40 days after the revelation at Sinai that the whole of the Jewish people engaged in idol worship? Now, some questions don't deserve answers. Here's an example. Have you stopped beating your wife? Yes or no? Well, let's see now. Let's see. Yes, I have stopped beating my wife, which means I've been beating her up until now. Or, no, I haven't stopped beating my wife, which means I'm still beating her. Frank, I'd rather reject the question. It's based on an assumption that I have been beating my wife, and that's not true. How could the Jewish people all worship a golden calf 40 days after is based on the assumption that they worship the golden calf? And I think we should question that assumption. So, what I propose to do is this. I'm going to go through the passage, Book of Exodus, chapter 32. First time through, just to ask questions. Just to ask questions. Now, I know that when you hear a question, there's this almost irresistible impulse to answer it, but I would ask you to conquer that impulse. It is a very good intellectual policy to gather data without considering hypotheses to explain it until you've seen all the data. Then, with all the data in front of you, you can start to float hypotheses, because if you don't do that, you create hypotheses based on half the data, and then you sort of committed to it, and you have confirmation bias on respect to the rest of the data, you don't get a balanced opinion. So we'll go through the passage twice. First time with the idea of national idol worship in mind, with it in mind, and we'll check the verses to see whether they support that idea or don't support that idea, or there's questions about it. And then we'll consider possibility of answers and go back through the entire passage. So in the Art Scroll, we're starting on page 493. And we will have cause to question the translation from time to time. And I'll do that in a way that I hope I'll be able to explain to you. The people saw, the people saw that Moses delayed in descending the mountain. And the people gathered around, see anything, Aaron and said to him, "Rise up, make for us gods that will go before us. For this man Moses brought us up from the land of Egypt. We do not know what became of him." Okay, now if we're questioning national idol worship, and he says, "Make for us gods," it looks like it's open and shut. It says so right here on the page. That's what it says. Good. Make a note of it. It's a piece of evidence in favor of national idol worship. Good, fine. But don't let your mind snap shut quite yet. Let's ask, according to this verse, what is the calamity that brings them to this project? What has gone wrong? Is this a matter of deep analysis? What does the verse say? We don't know where Moses is. Moses went up the mountain, and he hasn't come back. Is making new gods, changing your religion, a natural response to losing your leader? Moses, the leader, went up the mountain. He didn't come back. Let's say he didn't come back on time. He told them when he was coming back, and he didn't come back on time. Therefore, we should get a new religion? What's the connection between the problem and the solution? I don't think it's obvious at all. Second of all, what do they want the gods for? Well, they say they should go before us. Now, they're on a trek, all right. They're going through the wilderness. It would be nice to have divine guidance, 100%, but that's not all the gods do. Gods are in charge of success in war and fertility and productivity and natural resources and all the rest. Just they should be tour guides. That's all. Nothing else. So I think there are two questions here in the first verse that would have to be answered to get a comprehensive understanding of what's going on. That's point number one. Verse 2, Aaron said to them, remove the rings that are in the ears of your wives, sons, and daughters, and bring them to me. The entire people removed the gold rings that were in their ears and brought them to Aaron. Whether they did what they were told and did what they were told is an interesting side point, but not bearing a national idol worship, so I'm not going to comment on that. Verse 4, he took it from their hands, bound it up in a cloth, and fashioned it into a molten calf. Okay, now comes the second half of verse 4. They said, now the word here is identical to the Hebrew word at the top of the page, so I'm going to use the identical translation, even though your English changed it, and we'll discuss the translation later. These are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. This sentence contains three problems. They said, these are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. First of all, who's they? Who are they? Up until this point, there are two subjects, Aaron and the people. This they, whoever they are, say to the Jewish people, O Israel. So they aren't Israel. So who are they? That's one question. Second question, using the same translation, these are your gods. If you make one statue, it's hard to call it gods plural. And third of all, how could you possibly say that this is what's responsible for taking you up out of Egypt when you just made it now? Excuse me. You left Egypt months ago. How can you say this took you out of Egypt? So we have two problems in verse 1 and three more problems in the second half of 4. Now verse 5 is a bomb. Aaron saw and built an altar before him, or it, in the Hebrew it's ambiguous. Aaron called out and said, called out, public announcement, loudspeakers are on, a festival for Hashem tomorrow. For who? Now when the English writes Hashem, the Hebrew has a yud and a hey and a vav and a hey, which is the proper name of the Jewish God, the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, God of Moses. If verse 1 is talking about changing religions, going over to Egyptian calf worship, how can Aaron call out and say, tomorrow we're going to have a festival to the Jewish God? They ought to string him up from the nearest tree. That wasn't the project. This is very hard for the picture of national idol worship. I would say it's impossible. Okay, 6. They arose early the next day, offered up oil elevation offerings, and brought peace offerings. People sat down to drink, and they got up to revel. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, Hashem spoke to Moses, go, descend, for your people that you brought up from the land of Egypt has become corrupt. Now, there's a little minor question here. I'll give you an example, and this will be put in definitely sexist terms. I'm speaking to men here in the yeshiva. You're on your way home from work, and you call your wife on the way home. You know, how's everything at home? How's the day going? And she says, let me tell you what your son did. And you think, uh-oh. If he's my son, it must be bad. If it would be good, it would be our son. But no, all of a sudden he's my son. Okay, there's trouble. When I get home, there's trouble. God says to Moses, your people, whom you brought up out of Egypt, excuse me, wasn't God involved in that? This wasn't Moses' private project. So definitely is a preface to a condemnation. Right? Your people, they have become corrupt. Now, verse 8 is the indictment. Verse 8 is very important. We will spend a few minutes trying to understand what it says. Let's go through it. I'm going to correct the punctuation. The punctuation in this translation is incorrect, and I'll show you where it is. They have strayed quickly from the way that I have commanded them, comma, not period. They have made themselves a molten calf, semicolon. That's where the sentence breaks in half. In the Hebrew, you have an esnachta, for those who know what that means. They prostrated themselves to it and sacrificed to it, and they said, these are your gods, O Israel, which brought you up from the land of Egypt. It's the same word as in verse 1. I'm translating it consistently. As I said, we'll talk about the translation later. Now, this is an indictment, a list of crimes. I would like to ask you to count on your own. How many crimes are there in this indictment? How many crimes are mentioned in this indictment? Okay, let's hear some numbers.
7.
He has 7. Any other numbers?
3.
3. Okay, any other numbers? No, 4. Okay, so you have the maximum.
Yeah.
You tell us the 7 that you see, and the ones who see fewer will tell us why they don't count some of yours.
Aaron saw and built an altar.
Oh, I'm sorry, just verse 8.
Oh.
I'm sorry, just verse 8. I was wondering where that 7 came from. Okay, he has 5 for verse 8. How many do you have?
4.
Okay, that's 4. Okay, you have 3?
4.
4. Okay, so we got 5 and 4. You say you're 5, and they'll say what they disagree with.
Okay, so they strayed. 1. They made themselves a calf, prostrated, sacrificed, and then they said, "This is a God that brought you up."
Okay, so his 5 are they strayed, they made the calf, they prostrated, they offered sacrifices, and they said, "These are your gods." Okay, that's his 5. Now you only have 4. Which one are you leaving out?
Well, actually, I might add now from the angle I'd say that maybe that also they straight is 1, the calf is 2, prostrated is 3, and what they said is 4.
Sacrifices you left out? Offering sacrifices you left out as not being a crime?
Right, that's a 5.
Okay, he's back to 5. You're counting 4. You're also 5. I disagree with all 3 of you. I say there are 4. Let me give you an analogy. And see if you can apply the analogy, okay? A policeman brings in someone to the judge and says to the judge, I caught him and he committed 3 crimes. So the judge says, what did he do? He says, number 1, he stole a car. So the judge writes down auto theft. And then he says, and he ran a red light. So the judge writes down traffic violation. And the policeman says, and the 3rd crime that he committed is he broke the law.
Okay.
Well, breaking the law isn't another crime. Breaking the law is not the name of a crime. Breaking the law is just a way of saying that things have gone wrong. But it's not a crime. You can't put it in the indictment. You know, a 6-point indictment, a 6-point indictment, 6-count indictment. One of the counts is breaking the law. So the first one, what are the first one? They strayed quickly from the path which I commanded them. Is there a golden brick path, through the wilderness? Don't step off the path. Don't go picking petunias. No. Stay on the path. That's not a crime. That's just a statement that they've sinned, they've transgressed, and the crimes come after that. So there are 4 crimes. But then we have to ask, what is the introductory phrase doing there? If you tell me, well, it's an introduction to general failure, that you have at the end of 7. The end of 7 already says that they became corrupt. I don't think we need 2 introductions. So the problem in verse 8 is, What is the first clause in verse 8 doing? What is it contributing to the understanding of the scenario? Okay? So as we said, we're piling up questions. Okay, now, there's a lot of intervening material. I'm interested only in the question of national idol worship, so I'm skipping to 501. Moses comes down from the mountain and he sees what they're doing. He breaks the tablets, as people know. Then Moses stood at the gateway of the camp and said, "Whoever is for Hashem, join me." And all the Levites gathered around him. He said to them, "So said Hashem, the God of Israel, every man put his sword on his thigh and pass back and forth from gate to gate in the camp. Let every man kill his brother, every man his fellow, and every man his near one." The Levites did as Moses said, and about 3,000 men of the people fell that day. Now let me remind you just of a few numbers. There were approximately 600,000 men over the age of 20 in the people. The Levites killed about 3,000 men of the people. That means males, not females, only males, right? About 3,000 out of 600,000. That's a tiny, tiny minority, isn't it? Okay. The question that leaps to your mind instantly is, what did they do that the other ones didn't do? Wasn't this supposed to be national idol worship? Is anything worse than idol worship? How come they didn't all die? How come the Levites are chosen to execute this? What exactly is going on? Yeah, those are good questions. Okay, let's read some more. About 3,000. Moses said, "Dedicate yourselves this day to Hashem, for each man has opposed his son and his brother, that he may bestow upon you a blessing this day." Blessing for having executed those people. And the next day Moses said to the people, "You have committed a grievous sin." Grievous means really terrible. Nobody talks that way anymore. "And now I shall ascend to Hashem. Perhaps I can win atonement in the face of your sin." There's some sin on the books here. Moses is very worried about it. And he wants to find atonement for the sin. Let's see. Moses returned to Hashem and said, "I implore, I'm begging you. This people has committed a grievous sin." Okay. What is it? What's the grievous sin? Grievous sin. "And made themselves a god of gold." Aha. Yeah, that's true. They did do that. In verse 8, the indictment, there were 4 sins. The first one was making themselves a molten calf, a god of gold. That's a reasonable description. What about, and prostrated themselves to it, and offered sacrifices to it? And what about identifying it as the God that took them out of Egypt? What about all that? Why is Moses only asking mercy for what I hope is obvious to you is the least significant of all the crimes? You're not offering an answer now, right? We're not giving answers now. We're just going through, decide to get the questions all on the table. Right? What happened to the more serious crimes? "And now if you would but forgive their sin, but if not, erase me from your book that you have written." And God says to Moses, "Don't tell me how to write my book." Okay. And he gets a stay of execution. Well, whatever, I'm not going to go into that. That's later text. Well, Hashem said to Moses, "Whoever sinned against me, I shall erase from my book. Now go and lead the people to where I told you. Behold, my angels shall go before you, and on the day that I make my account, I'll bring their sin to account against them." Final sentence in this story: Hashem struck the people with a plague because they had made the calf which Aaron made. So first of all, not only the almost 3,000 died, but there's a census of the Jewish people before this incident and a census after the incident, and the censuses are almost identical. So we're not talking about 1 million people dying or 2 million people dying. We're talking about some more thousands of people. I don't know if it's recorded anywhere, the exact amount. Let's just put a round number on it. I'm putting this arbitrarily, but let's have a number to talk about. Let's say it's 10,000. Approximately 3,000 men, plus another 7,000 people. 10,000. 10,000 out of a potential 1,200,000. The crucial question is, why are the 10,000 who die different from the rest of the 1,190,000 who didn't die? If this is national idol worship, how do you sequester off the 10,000 to die and everybody else not to die? How do you do that? And I say to you, just as a matter of methodology, if you don't have answers to these questions, you don't understand the story. And if you don't understand the story, don't start with philosophy and anthropology and psychology and economics and sociology and all the rest. If you don't have the facts, don't start with your theories, with which you can make points in certain social circles, get likes. Okay, now I'm going to tell you an approach to the story. This is the Kuzari and Rashi and the Ibn Ezra and the Ramban. Rashi, if you read all the Rashis, not selectively, but read all the Rashis in the whole chapter. And although they differ in minor details, the major outline of the story comes out to be consistent among them. Verse 1, the problem is Moses' disappearance. The solution is a replacement for Moses. Of course, what else could it be? But the question is, who is Moses? What is Moses? All divine power reaches them through Moses. Moses was the one who triggered all of the plagues. Moses was the one who triggered the Red Sea parting to let them go across safely and to drown the Egyptians. Moses was the one who triggered the manna that they're eating every day. All divine power reaches them through Moses. Moses is gone. They don't know what the connection is going to be. They feel in danger of being discarded, cast off. You'll ask me, why should they feel that way? I will remind you that in the days of darkness, 80% of the Jewish people died because they weren't worthy of the Exodus. God showed himself also to have strict standards and to enforce those standards. So they're now in a panic over being connected. So they want to replace it for Moses, and they're looking for a connection. They choose a golden statue. Now, the thought is, golden statue? But that's as un-Jewish as you get. Jews don't make statues. Jews don't worship statues. They don't make statues. They're not allowed to use any statues in your worship. Really? Really, no statues? Is that true? Let's take a look. Yeah. Let's take a look on page 447. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And some words are worth an infinity of pictures. Think about that. You have a picture here of the Ark, the Holy Ark. The Ark where the tablets of the 10 pronouncements at Sinai are housed, golden box. And on top of the box there's a golden cover, the kapores, which has on it 2 golden angels. 2 golden angels. This is sitting in the Holy of Holies of the Jewish religion. 2 golden statues. And what are they for? Well, look on the next page. Verse 21. You shall place the cover, the kapores, on the ark from above, and into the ark you shall place the testimonial tablets that I shall give you. It is there that I will set my meetings with you. Aha. That box with the tablets in it, with the angels on it, that's the point of meeting. And I shall speak with you from atop the cover, from between the 2 cherubim, the 2 angels that are on the Ark of the Testimony. That spot between the 2 angels, that's the connecting point between God, so to speak, in heaven and you on earth. It's the connector. Golden statues are the connector. Hello, Jewish religion, golden statues are the connector between God and Moses and prophecy and God and the Jewish people. So is the Jewish religion against golden statues to be the connector? Doesn't look like it, does it? Okay, you'll say, but Rabbi, angels is one thing and a calf is something else. That's true. The artistic representation is different. The symbolism is different. But don't talk to me about being forbidden to use golden statues as an intermediary. Here, golden statues are used as the intermediary. So you can say, your artistic appreciation and your spiritual sensitivity to the occasion gave you the wrong subject. That's not why they're being punished. They're not being punished for that. Okay, so now you say, well, Rabbi, they're looking for a replacement for Moses. Moses is a human being. Why not replace him with another human being? Like his brother Aaron, who's here, who's also a prophet. Wouldn't that be a more natural way to replace him? Replacing him with a statue? And the answer is, people die. People die. If you replace him with a person, you're guaranteeing repeated crises of connection. By the way, do the people have any illusion about Moses' humanity? About his being just a mortal human being? Look at verse 1. What do the people say in verse 1? Sorry?
In the Pshat Truma?
I couldn't hear you.
In Parashat Truma? Or in...
No, right here. I'm sorry. I'm back where we are in
Also,
Kislev.
Moses is delayed in descending the mountain. People gathered Aaron and said, rise up, make first gods. That one.
4, keep going, 4.
That will go before us for this man Moshe, who brought us from the land of Egypt. We do not know what became of him.
Yeah. What words did he, you just read them. What words are there that you could erase and lose nothing?
Ha'ish.
How about this man?
Yeah.
Was anybody in doubt that Moses is a man? Okay, but today with 67 genders. All right, I won't go into that. I won't go into that. But my goodness gracious, why did they say this man? They're under no illusions. They did not deify Moses.
Right.
They know very well that he's a man. So if you choose a person, you're going to guarantee that in a few years you're going to have this crisis over again. Far better that there should be a golden statue. And indeed, God uses a golden statue. He doesn't use a man. So that's not the problem here. Okay, now, later on in the text, it says that when they went on their trek through the wilderness, the Aaron went before them to find them a place to stop. So this, in verse 1, where it says, we want this thing to go before us on our trek, is exactly correct. I asked, if they're really gods, then why do you localize their activity just to find a path through the wilderness? Gods do a lot more than that. But this link, this new link with God, that's one of the functions that it served. It led them through the wilderness. So it's quite appropriate for them to say that. Now, here's one key to the whole story. This was the project of almost everyone. Almost everyone wanted a replacement for Moses. But there were a few who stepped over the line, who really wanted to worship it. Look again at verse 8. Verse 8, we said, breaks in half. I changed the punctuation in verse 8. The first half of verse 8 is, they've strayed quickly from the path which I've commanded them. They made themselves a molten calf, semicolon. The first half of the verse describes the 99% of the people. They made the calf to be a replacement for Moses. The second half of the verse describes the 1%, inexact, but roughly, 1% of people who prostrated themselves to it, offered sacrifices to it, identified it as what took them out of Egypt. That was the people who worshipped it. So you have two groups. One tiny group that actually worshipped it, and everybody else who wanted to replace it for Moses. Now do you understand why approximately 10,000 died and nobody else? Because approximately 10,000 are the ones who worshipped it. Worshipping it is very bad. It's idol worship. That is idol worship. But the rest of them didn't do idol worship. They were not guilty of idol worship. They wanted a replacement for Moses. So the ones who were guilty of idol worship, the ones who were identified publicly, for whom there were witnesses, and there was a warning so they could be prosecuted according to Jewish law, those are the ones who were executed by the Levites. The Levites executed the publicly identified idol worshippers. The plague killed the ones who weren't publicly identified or who weren't warned. Those are the ones that God punished. But the approximately 10,000 were all the idol worshippers, and 1,190,000 were those who wanted a replacement for Moses and did not worship it as an idol. This shows us the falsity of the question we started with. How could it be the whole Jewish people was guilty of idol worship a mere 40 days after the revelation of Sinai? It's not true. It never happened. Now, someone will say, but Rabbi, what about make us gods? It does say that, doesn't it? I mean, you can't just blink away those words. And I agree. It can't just blink away those words. But now the time has come to question the translation. The word in Hebrew here is Elohim. Elohim does not always mean God. Doesn't always mean God. I'll give you a few examples. Right here in the book of Exodus. Take a look. On page 309. Page 309 is the appearance of God at the burning bush and wanting to send Moses down, and Moses protesting. Almost at the end of the sequence, verse 14 at the bottom of the page, God was angry at Moses, and he said, "Isn't that Aaron your brother the Levite? I know that he will surely speak." Moses complained that he's not capable of speaking. "Oh, behold, he's coming out to greet you. When he sees you, he'll be rejoiced in his heart." Okay, now God says to Moses, here's the plan. You shall speak to him and put the words in his mouth. You can't speak audibly, smoothly, fluently. You'll mumble into his mouth. He'll listen to you. And he'll speak for you. "And I shall be with your mouth and with his mouth, and teach you both what you are to do. He shall speak for you to the people, and it will be that he will be your mouth, and you will be his Elohim." In the Hebrew it says, you will be Aaron's Elohim. Wow is right. I don't think that Aaron mistook his brother for the creator of heavens and earth. Elohim, here the translator did a beautiful job. He said leader. Elohim can be a judge, can be a ruler. Elohim can be an angel, and can also be God. Yes, the vast majority of the time, Elohim is used for God. That's quite true. But there is a minority. And here, if he's saying that Moses is going to be an Elohim for Aaron, here it definitely does not mean that Moses is going to be God. Not even God for Aaron. Just let me get through this without distraction, because otherwise it's going to get lost. Now, also you have in Parshas Mishpatim another usage, famous usage of look on page 419. Here's a famous case in civil law. A gives B an item to watch and to guard. Goes off on a trip to Acapulco, and he comes back, and the item's gone. Gone! So he says to the watchman, what happened? And he says, it was stolen, it got broken, and it was struck by lightning. Who knows? He gives some excuse, and the item isn't there. Well, the fellow who went on vacation is upset. And he takes the guy to court. Maybe you were irresponsible, and maybe you stole it, and let's clarify things here. So the I'm on the wrong page. I'm sorry. Ugh. Yeah, it's on page 49, right? 429. So they come to the Torah says the two of them should come to the court, top of the page. The one who's watching it should take a vow that he didn't lay his hand on his fellow's property for any item of liability, whatever kind of thing, ox, donkey, sheep, or garment. And he says about it, so this is it. To the court shall come both their claims. Whoever the court finds guilty shall be double to his fellow. Now, the words the court, the phrase the court, appear in this passage three times. All three times the word in Hebrew is Elohim. They're talking about a human court. They're talking about judges. All three times the word is Elohim. The word Elohim can refer to a human judge. The thought isn't too far to seek. They're expressing divine judgment, divine justice. They're doing it as the basis of the revealed divine laws. But at any rate, the word Elohim refers here to judges. There's a third place, which we don't have in this book because it's not even a Haftarah, in the first book of Samuel, chapter 28. There, Samuel the prophet has died and been buried. King Saul is in battle with the Philistines. Things are not going well, and he's very afraid. And Saul goes and finds a person who communes with the dead. This is against Jewish law, and he himself tried to eliminate that practice from the Jewish people. But there were some whom he missed. And now, in his distress, he goes to this person and says, I need to communicate with Samuel. Please raise his soul for me. And she does so. She succeeds in doing so. During the process, she suddenly goes into a panic, into a fright, into shock. And Saul recognizes this in her and says, what's the matter? What do you see? And she says the following words, Elohim ra'isi olim min ha'aretz. I see Elohim coming up out of the ground. Now, she's raising Saul. Saul traveled the length and breadth of Israel every year. Everybody knew him. She's doing what she was told, and she succeeds. Indeed, in the next verses, Saul and Samuel communicate with one another. They talk to one another. But the word she uses is Elohim. That's because when she sees him, she's so filled with awe and fright, she uses the strongest word in the vocabulary to describe something that causes her that fright. She does not think she is witnessing the King of heavens and earth, the creator of heavens and earth. So the word Elohim doesn't have to be translated as God's. Rabbi Kaplan, in his Living Torah, translates here oracle. That's not bad as a translation, but I wanted to show you where it comes from. And I wanted to account for the way in which this translator has translated it, that in terms of the real explanation of the verse, it's not an appropriate translation. And the word Elohim is singular, even if it takes a plural verb, it's singular. Because plurals can be used as a sign of respect. When the brothers come back to Jacob and they report their experiences in Egypt, they describe Joseph as Adonai Haaretz, literally the masters of the land. He's only one. They didn't think it was a split personality. But out of respect, they used the plural for him. So the appropriate translation here would be, make us something that will be a substitute for Moses in our relation, in our connection with God. And and when the tabernacle is made, the Aron containing the tablets and all of the surrounding area and all the other implements, there's a festival celebrating it. So when they say in verse 5, tomorrow, when Aaron says in verse 5, tomorrow we'll have a festival to Hashem, yes, a festival of inaugurating the link with God. That's what the festival is for. Everything fits the picture. Now, this also helps with verse 4, because when they say, Aaron says, this is what took you out of the land of Egypt, well, the statue wasn't there, but nobody thinks the statue does anything. No Jew ever thought that the angels on top of the Aron in the Holy of Holies, the golden angels, did things. You know, at night when nobody was awake, they stepped off the Aron and went around planting seeds or killing people and so on and so on. Nobody thought statues did anything. This is the connection with the God who took us out of Egypt, the God that you knew from before, of course. So, that being the case, there's no question of national idol worship here. Now, what about the introduction to verse 8? We said verse 8 breaks in half. The first half describes the 1,190,000 who took it as a replacement for Moses. And the second half describes the idol worship. But the first half had an introduction. They've strayed quickly from the path which I have commanded them. Still, what do you need that for? Previous verse said they became corrupt. You know very well things have gone badly. The answer is that this first introductory phrase explains the crime. Let's see now. The 1,190,000 didn't commit idol worship. So what did they do? They made the calf. What is the crime in making the calf? The crime is you did it on your own. The Torah is not a religion based on religious inspiration and imagination and theorizing and sensitivity and creativity. That's not what it's based on. It's based on the infinite divine breaking into the finite confines of our world and revealing to us how to relate to the divine. Inventing your own form of expression, especially the connection between God and man, inventing it on your own, that is a tragic, terrible crime. Now, I have to confess, as a philosopher, I find this a little difficult to deal with, but here's the truth. The crime of idol worship was punished immediately by death. The crime of philosophically misunderstanding the basis of the religion, no, okay. It's a philosophical crime. It's a kafela. Not so terrible. With that we could have a stay of execution, and they don't have to be killed, and they could spread it out over generations. Okay. Philosophy's not so important. Don't get so excited. As you can imagine, for me that's a little difficult to take, but that's the message. The message is you did it on your own. You strayed from the path which I commanded you. And that means movements dedicated to applying their own human sensitivity to reform, to remake, to reconstruct, to amalgamate the Jewish religion's relationship with God in the light of what they know and what they understand and what they've come to realize and all the rest of it, is a repeat of the sin of the golden calf. It's the same thing over again. It's the same thing over again. And if the shoe fits on your foot, then you should wear it. And hopefully you'll take it off and join another group. Okay, so this, I think, is an adequate explanation. I haven't got time. I'll just tell you what the answer to the question. Who's the they? They said, this is your God or the connection, O Israel, brought you out of the land of Egypt. Who's the they? The Erev Rav. This is the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude of people who joined the Jewish people on the exodus from Egypt. That means that the idea, what I'm telling you now, isn't directly in the text. This isn't directly in the text. Everything else I've said up until now, I think you can prove from the text, from the strict Hebrew translation of the text. Notice I didn't invoke any commentators, no midrash, no Talmud, I didn't invoke them as authorities. This is right in the words. This is what I said at the beginning. You can hide something by putting it on the table with the baubles. The words are right here. How did anyone read verse 5 and say it was national idol worship? A festival to Hashem. How did they read that? Very, very intelligent people have missed this, including a great deal of the Christian world, a great deal of the Muslim world, who read it through their prejudices. They want to condemn the Jewish people and just don't read the words, don't pay attention to the words. So, that's certainly out of the question. And you see now how the questions about this before we close, because otherwise I'll do the other things. But if there's a question of what I said, you had a question that I didn't answer, or I didn't let you ask. Yeah.
One, the period of time that happened between the Moshe, since the creation of the golden calf and Moshe going back to the people. Like how
I'm not quite sure what you mean. He went up the mountain.
Yes.
He was there for 40 days and 40 nights. That's it. Then he came down. They had made the golden calf already.
Yeah, like how long it was between the creation of the golden calf and Moshe being back with the people. That's the
Hours.
just hours.
Just hours.
So maybe that's why only 10,000 were killed. Perhaps I didn't just assume.
No. They make the calf.
Yes.
He comes down. He breaks the tablets. He calls the Levites over to him. And then he tells the Levites, kill people. Now there's no time limit. There's no few hours. They have enough time to kill all the people who need to be killed.
No, I mean like there was that was a time that only 10,000 were having time to idol worship. That's what I mean.
Bowing down to the calf is idol worship.
Yes.
That takes about 60 seconds.
Alright.
And they can all do it at the same time. Everybody has his own piece of land. You know, they're all spread out. They can all do it exactly. And in fact, well, okay, that can be done all together. It's not a question necessarily of offering sacrifice and everything else. Even saying "Ato Eli" to a foreign god is an act of idol worship. Even saying it. So that won't help. Good try. Yeah.
Nah, and the other one quickly, like why then, like literally, the third word of the Torah is Elohim. Like why such a main word, so to speak?
That they should use for it. Okay, I didn't explain that. I'll explain that. There's a verse in the Torah which says, "Umiktashiti ro," you should have awe before the mikdash, meaning the tabernacle, where the ark is with the tablets, with the angels on top of the ark. You should have awe for the tabernacle. So the Gemara says, "Are you kidding? Awe for the tabernacle? Awe for a building? Jews don't have awe for buildings. Excuse me." And the Gemara says, "Of course not. Of course not. It means you should have awe for the one whose presence dwells in the building." Aha, gotcha. So now I understand. It's the one, it's for God. Awe is for God, correct. But why does it say building? The word in the verse is building, not God, but building. Why does it use the word building to tell me to have awe for God whose presence is in the building? The answer is, how do you show awe for God? How do you do that? You know, I show awe for the Melech. If he walks into the room, I'll stand up to show him honor. But I can't do that for God. So God puts in the world expressions of his presence, and we relate to those expressions of his presence to show awe for God. One of those expressions is the tabernacle and the temple. Express your awe for God by the way you interact with the tabernacle. Same thing's true. They're supposed to have awe and respect in this way for your parents, for your teachers, for your Torah teachers. And Gemara makes clear that it should be equal to the awe for God. And it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch, and the Taz, I believe, is the one who asks, you have awe for your Torah teachers equal to your awe for God? What are you talking about? How can anything be equal to God? And the answer is, how are you going to show awe for God? These are the people who teach you Torah. These are the people who are expressing God's will for you by showing awe for them. You're showing awe for God. Otherwise, there's no direct way to do it. So they use the word Elohim for the link because it's a link with God and it has the same awesomeness that God has, just like God said to Moses, Aaron will be in awe of you. He'll use the word Elohim for you because of the way you stand. Just like the Torah uses the word Elohim for the judges who express God's justice because of awe for them. Just like the necromancer had used the word Elohim for her vision of Samuel because it filled her with that kind of awe. It's the same thing. It's a word for that which fills you with an awe. And that awe it comes from something which is related to God. So it's quite natural, I think, to use the word Elohim for that. Yeah.
Just to touch on that real quick, by saying the same fear we need to have for God, we have to display to our teachers. Is it dafka like when we fear God? Like that's how can we compare that to a human? Like I don't understand. Like is it the same? What part of the fears is the same?
I'm sympathetic. He's asking whether the awe and fear for anything could be like the awe and fear for God. But let me, and maybe there's at least a nuance to what you're saying that I would agree with. But let me give you an example. Boy, my throat is terrible tonight. You have a king, and the king communicates with his people by sending out messengers. Gives them a scroll, they come on a horse, and the drums roll, the trumpets blow, and everybody knows that the king's messenger has come to the square. Everybody comes to the square, and trumpets blow, and he takes out the scroll. Thus says the king, and he reads the proclamation to the people. How do they treat the messenger? They treat him nicely? With respect? He's a messenger boy. He reads things and goes from place to place. Let him sleep in the stable with the horses. I don't think so. Because he's the king's messenger. And you treat him with a lot of respect, and a lot of care, and a lot of sensitivity, because he's the king's messenger. Right? That's what drips over onto the house where the Shekhinah is, or to the people who teach God's, right? And couple that with the fact that with the real king, you could go to the palace and show direct honor to the king. But here you can't do it. So you may have it in your heart, but how do you show it? You show it by the way in which you interact with those who express his presence in the world. I think that's what's going on.